Doctor slash therapist of Reddit. Do you have any no, that's not normal stories? If so, what abnormal habit slash oddity did the patient have thinking it was normal? Guy in his 20s came in complaining of belly button problem. I examined him. He had an irritated scab inside the belly button caused by aggressive lint picking. But dude was sweaty and had a slight tremor. Looked like crap. When I asked how he was feeling overall, he said, "Oh, okay, I guess. Just a little tired. Drank a little more this week than usual. Probably overdid it." I had to pry for details, and turns out he drank a gallon of gin over the last 3 days and stopped drinking alcohol when he started vomiting large amounts of blood and pooping a mixture of bright red blood and dark sticky stuff, melina digested blood. He was totally unaware of the fact that he was going through alcohol withdrawal, sweating, shaking, because he hadn't stopped drinking long enough in recent memory to experience symptoms. I sent him straight to the emergency room, where they found a tear in his esophagus that required immediate intervention, and he was admitted for inpatient alcohol detox. I read his hospital note. He still insisted that the ed doc examine his belly button. I love the note at the end. "I don't care about my life. Just save my belly button." His belly button did, after all, potentially save his life by being scabby. Woman came to the hospital because she was feeling tired and casually mentioned her persistent vaginal bleeding she'd been dealing with for 2 months. She said it wasn't ever a large amount, so she didn't think twice about it. Labs were done and her hemoglobin was 3.9. For context, that's low. Like, you should be dying low. But she looked perfectly fine. 50-ish-year-old man who came in for chronic issue follow-up. He brought his wife with him this time around. At the end of the visit, she says, "Hey, tell the doc about that thing you can do." He turns to me proudly and tells me that he can whistle from his penis. If he really pushed, he could blow gas from it. His wife insisted it wasn't normal, but he was certain most guys could. Turns out, he had a connection between his bowel and his bladder. Mom brings her kid in because the babysitter was concerned about these spells the child would have. Apparently, the child would have episodes where he would just blankly stare at them and not acknowledge whatever it is they were telling him, or whatever he was doing. The parents just thought he was being an asshole and not listening to them, or being absent-minded. Kid turned out to be having absence seizures. A younger gal who had come in for generalized abdominal pain that she experienced on and off for years, but just always wrote off to either menstrual cramps or bad food or life. We had asked her if her bowel movements were regular, and she said yes. At some point, someone was sharp enough to ask her how often she had bowel movements, to which she said about once every 2 to 3 weeks. She had been suffering from pretty severe constipation, but just thought it was normal to have BMs once to twice a month. I'm sure I have more, but I think I wrote enough for now. Ninja Reddit. Oh yeah, I have a lot of stories involving skin lesions. Please people, no doctor will ever fault you for wanting to just get something looked at. There are a few easy ways to tell if you're looking at something potentially evil. Gotta amend the above edit due to people's bad experiences. No decent doctor should blow you off if you're concerned about a skin lesion. They should at least take the time to discuss why it is they are not worried about a lesion if it's not concerning. I was a patient, but when I went in for a routine physical, the doctor poked my extended belly and asked how long it had been like that. I laughed and said, "What? My beer belly? Oh, since I was 21 probably." Turned out that, no, the beer belly was a cyst that had grown really large, and that was why my friends kept saying I looked pregnant. I thought I just had really shitty friends. Had to have emergency surgery, and for a week or so they did not know if it was a cyst or ovarian cancer. It was a pretty big scare. Believe it or not, this also happened to me. I found it because I became pregnant and they saw it in the ultrasound. Also had to have an emergency surgery, and I lost 32 pounds that day. I always just thought I gained weight weird or something. 32 pounds. Holy fucking shit. The lady with type B COPD who had long-term cigarette user symptoms. She spontaneously got COPD, having never smoked in her entire life. How do you determine people aren't lying in situations like this? I know it's not terribly self-serving, but people lie about weird shit at the worst times for bad reasons. Cigarettes leave a lot of shit in your system and it's easy to tell if someone smokes. You know those blackened lungs they show you? Those are just one part of what cigarettes does to your body. Fuck, your lungs actually go black? I just assumed that was hyperbolic and wildly exaggerated in order to get people to stop smoking. A pimple on her breast that was actually a 4-inch wide, bleeding and necrotic breast tumor protruding through her skin. Oh, that's sort of like me. I thought I had a pimple on my back until it shot out what I could only describe as moldy old cheese mixed with cream of chicken and blood. Wasn't necrotic as far as I know, just an abscess. The smell is indescribable. I'm sure you as, I assume, a medical professional know what I mean. My pet got one of those, and I ended up draining it myself. It was not great. The pus was bright green. I feel like my story belongs here, even though I'm the patient, since the exact scenario happened to me. A few years back my mental health totally took a skydive. As a result I dropped out of school and had to start a recovery program. The first thing I had to do was talk to a psychologist. During these conversations with the psychologist, she'd focus on different parts of my life. So one day she'd ask about relationships and the next, childhood memories and so on. After a few conversations she focused on my social life. I then told her that it's pretty much non-existent. And it always has been. She then stated that I must have suffered from loneliness a lot then. I just told her that I've never actually felt lonely at any point in my life. After all, it's pretty hard to feel lonely with the two voices in your head always keeping conversation. But surely she knew that. Right, well as it turns out, no. Apparently everybody else only have their own voice in their head. My entire life has been a lie. Turns out I'm schizophrenic. Who TF knew eh? Obligatory. I'm the patient. I thought for years that I was just continually getting more and more out of shape. Despite my best efforts, nothing helped. I would just hit this wall and couldn't keep going. Eventually I couldn't walk from my driveway to my house without needing a break to breathe. Turns out shortness of breath isn't just something to wave away. It's also something I wish doctors had taken seriously. In the span of 2 weeks, I went from seeing a local clinic PA to being admitted to the ICU. My doctor told my husband he had no idea how I was still alive, nevertheless functioning. This was me with my heart problems. I literally thought I was just lazy and out of shape, but never improved despite me trying to work out more. Turns out I had literally been in heart failure my entire life. It eventually quickly tanked to the point I needed a transplant. Now I feel like a freaking superhuman because I can exercise without feeling like I'm dying. I don't need a transplant. But over a period of 8 months or so, I went from being fairly out of shape, but working on it and going to the gym several times a week, to being basically unable to stand up without feeling like I was going to pass out. My doctor was treating me for asthma for 6 months until I got a chest x-ray and then an MRI and they found fluid on my lungs. I was diagnosed with dilated cardiomyopathy in early February, and I still can't believe how much better I feel now I'm on the right medications. Was on urology rotation in medical school when a 20-something-year-old male presented with the complaint that one of his nuts was too small and he wanted them to be equal because it was embarrassing. One testicle was normal, the too small one, while the other was the size of a grapefruit. Unfortunately the cancer had metastasized. Not sure how he did long term as I rotated off the service. After he had surgery, a guy was in a chat that was primarily woman based and we diagnosed his testicle cancer. He wasn't that concerned and was going to talk to his doctor in a couple of months because he feels this lump and we told him no. He needs to go in tomorrow. He did need to get his ball removed and was thankful that we helped him. And I told him that if he had been willing to share his ID for recovery letters and gifts I would have sent some pens for him to write with. Uniballs. Of course. As a patient, I went in for a standard sleep study because I was always exhausted. Doctor asked me afterwards if I would consider signing a release for him to write a paper on me. Apparently I moved my legs over 9,000 in the course of the night. Apparently it was RLS. I wasn't realizing I had. My wife never even told me I did it, and I had no idea. She casually agreed after I told her what the doc said. I barely met the Rex for moderate sleep apnea, where they will recipe a machine. God, I love that thing. I sleep so much better with it. Whiffy on the other hand, uses hers and sleeps with her mouth open. So annoying to listen to the air hiss out all night. What's RLS? Rowdy legs syndrome? Restless leg syndrome. Lol. Except when it's over 9,000. Then it's rowdy leg syndrome. I had a root canal needed in a molar. I went in, so he could prep it for the next step. But 2 hours in, and he had to call it for the day. So by the 4th 2-hour visit, when it was finally done, I was sick of seeing my dentist. Almost a year later I'm back at the dentist, and he turns to his assistant and says this is the one with that root canal. I'm a legend. Apparently. Not a doctor, but when I was maybe 14 or 13 I remember describing to my primary how during my periods I would pass out from the pain, couldn't move or I would get sick, and told her a story about how I went on a trip to Italy and sometime in the middle of the flight became wildly sick to the point of terrifying the poor flight attendants. I'm so sorry flight attendants. By filling 4 puke bags, crawling to the back of the plane clutching my stomach, finding the doors locked attempting to use the first class bathrooms so I could finish being sick. When denied entry just lay down in the aisle waiting for sweet death to take me. It did not. Death has terrible customer service and then passed out when we exited the plane. But periods are supposed to be painful, right? The doctor was like, honey, you're supposed to experience some discomfort not being capacitated anyway. She put me on birth control and I've never been happier. I'm more disturbed they wouldn't let a 13-year-old girl clearly suffering from some kind of debilitating illness go into first class to use their restroom. That's absolutely cruel. Obligatory. I'm not a doctor. Boo it. I have celiac disease and am in the process of getting a Hashimoto's hyperthyroidism diagnosis. I was the abnormal patient when I was a little kid. Because not only did I get monthly bladder infections, apparently I had to use a catheter for a while, but I don't remember that at all. My doctor was confused why I always had extreme gas, joint pain, and weekly headaches at the ripe old age of 6. Turns out it was just me slowly dying because I ate a lot of wheat bread with celiac disease. Close bracket. Celiac is a nightmare. I was 17 when I was diagnosed. Symptoms can come on super fast too. I think I dropped something like 7 to 10 pounds, which on my frame was pretty significant, and that's what got me into the doctor's office first. This happened to me. I woke up with a period so heavy the bed was soaked. Stood up and it just poured out of me. Clots the size of my palm. Overwhelmed, I did what any woman would do if they could and phoned my mum to come over and comfort me and help me clean up the mess. At this point I was still thinking this is a strangely heavy period, and I was more worried about how my landlord would react to the carpet. I then fainted. Woke up. Fainted again. Phoned mum to cry about my stupid period making me miss work. My parents called an ambulance that arrived to the house first and rushed me to hospital. Not period. Massive internal hemorrhage in the womb.